This is CBS. This is 60 Minutes. This is the most mainstream U.S. war machine propaganda you could imagine. 60 Minutes on the CBS. And they're doing a segment just the other day about how much Saudi Arabia was involved in 9/11. Investigators for 9/11 families examined video taken by a man with ties to Saudi intelligence referencing a plan. There's this video that he basically, this is back in the, late 90s, early 2000, where he took a VHS camera or whatever and walked around videotaping the Capitol building and other areas and their security and how exactly what could be done. And this guy had connections to Saudi intelligence. And so my immediate question is, why would the U.S. propaganda machine be involved in revealing connections between Saudi Arabia and 9/11 after they have covered it up for so many years? The 80, was it 80? Yeah. The 80 redacted pages from the 9/11 Commission report, they eventually revealed it several years ago, or some of it. And a lot of it had to do with Saudi Arabia, all these connections to Saudi Arabia, all this stuff. Why would U.S. mainstream media be talking about Saudi Arabia? Clearly, if you hear them revealing stuff about Saudi Arabia connected to 9/11, that our so-called close ally was the cause or part of the cause of the largest attack that the U.S. has seen in recent years, then something must be going on with Saudi Arabia to start going after Saudi Arabia. Don't forget, Saudi Arabia has so much immunity from U.S. critique that they were able to grab up and execute and chop up and throw into a barbecue pit a Washington Post journalist, Jamal Khashoggi, and the U.S. still didn't do anything. And yet here is the mainstream media all of a sudden turning on Saudi Arabia. You got to remember to what extent the U.S. went to protect Saudi Arabia after 9/11. This is also from CBS. There were no flights in the air. These are days when 0 U.S. flights are in the air, right? All flights were grounded, 100%, except if you were in the bin Laden family. All these bin Ladens are in the United States, and they're flown out of the country in a day when planes are not allowed to be in the air. How close do you have to be with the U.S. government and the FBI to get flights out of the country on days when no flights are allowed in the air? Then you have fast forward to now, you have mainstream media saying, oh yeah, Saudi Arabia totally planned and perpetrated 9/11. Why would the mainstream media, the U.S. empire's bullhorn, go after Saudi Arabia right now like this? Well, again, as I brought to you last week, it's the petrodollar. This is basically the U.S. is taking the gloves off because they are now furious at Saudi Arabia for not renewing the petrodollar deal. There is some debate as to whether it was a $50 petro deal or whether it has been an ongoing petro deal that's kind of re-signed. And I brought to you how most mainstream media, mainstream media wasn't covering it at all, except for one article in NASDAQ that I saw that said petrodollar had been dropped. But now there is a mainstream media article saying, oh no, that's fake news. Yes, Adrian, I covered that as well. Adrian's asking, where did the towers go? I didn't know this part until recently. The amount of, I don't remember the numbers, but whatever it is, crazy amount of tonnage of steel. You see pieces were given to certain areas in order to create monuments. And I saw one just the other day. I can't remember where I was. Maybe somewhere in Baltimore. But so pieces of the towers are all over. They're scattered. They're in other countries. And I'm talking small pieces, or the biggest, 20 feet tall. But generally, we're talking 5 feet tall. Pieces of the tower all over these places. Outside of those pieces, all of the rest was not analyzed, never been touched. It was just like taken to landfills and cut down into tiny pieces and taken to landfill. It was just like, it was kind of like the cars that were shot up at the Nova Music Festival, where Israel has stated that they shredded and buried the cars in an undisclosed location. Crazy amount of tons and tons and tons, I don't remember the number, of steel, and it just disappeared into landfills. And it was so much that they created a special center, I believe in Long Island, or was it Staten Island? Like the size of, whatever number of 3 football fields or something, where they just brought the ruins of the towers and disposed of them in a secrecy, in a place that no one could go and look at them, which is Kind of insane. So to get back to why is our mainstream media now turning on Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia, and this one actually is in the mainstream media. I was actually surprised that mainstream media finally basically realized, I guess they had certain areas of mainstream media realized they had to cover the fact the petrodollar deal is just about over. And this is Yahoo Finance, very mainstream outlet, and they're reposting Business Insider. It says how a Saudi pullback from a landmark U.S. deal would be bad news for dollar dominance. Saudi Arabia is moving away from the U.S. dollar in the oil trade as it looks at alternative markets. The end of a long-standing petrodollar agreement would dent dollar dominance, the Atlantic Council wrote. So the Atlantic Council is a U.S. empire think tank. They are only going to say things that either help the U.S. empire or is a truth that they can't avoid, and they have to reveal the truth about, they have to say something about it. And this seems to be one of those cases. So for this to be fake news, you'd have to have the Atlantic Council lying about it, which the Atlantic Council would never admit the petrodollar deal was over if it weren't over. And now you have Yahoo Finance saying it is not fake news. So there you go.